Welcome to Xi Jinping Briefing. The content of the briefing includes Beijing's dilemma if DPP wins Taiwan election, what level of response? My friend Jimmy Lai, a British national, has been jailed by China. This must not stand. Top China diplomat warns of decoupling risk even as ties improve. Battle lines, Israel continues Gaza assault, confrontation in the Red Sea and Taiwan goes to the polls. Xi's latest purge targets the military. Why did powerful generals fall out of favor? Beijing's dilemma if DPP wins Taiwan election, what level of response? South China Morning Post. As Taiwan's election approaches, Beijing is considering its options for how to respond to a possible victory by an independence-leaning president. Beijing has used various tactics in the past to show its displeasure at what it sees as a drift towards Taiwanese sovereignty, including military threats, trade restrictions, and cyber campaigns. However, these tactics have not been effective and have often increased support for the pro-independence Democratic Progressive Party, DPP. Beijing may choose to repeat some of these tactics, such as military exercises or economic sanctions, but it could also explore new options such as cutting off supply routes to Taiwanese islands or increasing drone overflights. Each of these options carries risks and could further push regional allies into the U.S. camp, but Beijing may be willing to take these risks to prevent Taiwan from moving further towards independence. Another option for Beijing would be to do relatively little and play the long game. China's military power is increasing, and some U.S. Republicans have questioned the U.S.'s commitment to defending Taiwan. Beijing may believe that it can eventually reunite Taiwan with the mainland, even if it takes time. However, this approach carries its own risks and may not be enough to satisfy hardliners in Beijing. Ultimately, Beijing faces a dilemma as it tries to prevent Taiwanese independence without pushing the region into war. The outcome of Taiwan's election and Beijing's response will have significant implications for the future of cross-strait relations. My friend Jimmy Lai, a British national, has been jailed by China. This must not stand. Telegraph. China's crackdown on human rights, particularly in Hong Kong, has prompted concern about the potential for military action against Taiwan. China's President Xi Jinping has repeatedly stated his intention to reunify Taiwan with China, but the people of Taiwan are unlikely to willingly adopt China's model of governance. China's human rights abuses, such as the persecution of Uyghur Muslims and the repression of religion in general, demonstrate the true nature of the regime in Beijing. In Hong Kong, freedom of expression, assembly, association, and the press have all been stripped away since the imposition of the national security law in 2020. The decline in Hong Kong is exemplified by the ongoing trial of media tycoon and pro-democracy activist Jimmy Lai. Lai, along with several other individuals, is accused of conspiring with foreign forces, publishing seditious materials, and being the mastermind behind the pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong. These charges are absurd and fail to recognize the diversity within Hong Kong's democracy movement. Lai has always advocated for peaceful protest and the protection of basic rights and freedoms promised to Hong Kong in international treaties. The British government's response to Lai's case has been criticized for being inadequate. While there have been some efforts to raise awareness of Lai's situation, more needs to be done. The British Foreign Secretary should condemn the trial as unjust and politically motivated and call for Lai's immediate release. Additionally, the British government should ensure that Hong Kong's human rights situation is prominently raised during China's review at the UN later this month. Finally, the British government should respond to the call for sanctions against Hong Kong's chief executive and Beijing's representative in Hong Kong, John Lee. Top China diplomat warns of decoupling risk even as ties improve. Bloomberg. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi has warned the U.S. that any attempt to decouple the two economies would be counterproductive and self-defeating. Speaking at an event marking the 45th anniversary of U.S.-China diplomatic relations, Wang cited initiatives that reflect improved ties between the two countries, including streamlined visas for U.S. travelers and cooperation on issues such as counter-narcotics. Tensions between China and the U.S. have eased somewhat since President Joe Biden and Chinese leader Xi Jinping met in November, resulting in a resumption of high-level military-to-military ties and a commitment to boost interactions between people in the two countries. However, recent issues such as visa problems for Chinese students in the U.S. and China's imposition of sanctions on a U.S. company and two researchers over work related to Xinjiang have underscored the fragility of the relationship. Battle lines, Israel continues Gaza assault, confrontation in the Red Sea and Taiwan goes to the polls. Telegraph. The Battle Lines podcast episode discusses the current tensions and conflicts occurring in different parts of the world. It begins with an update on the war in Gaza, provided by foreign correspondent Lizzie Porter in Jerusalem. The podcast then shifts its focus to the tensions rising in the Red Sea, where Houthi rebels are targeting a busy shipping lane with missiles and drones. Finally, the podcast travels to Taiwan, where a presidential election is taking place that could have significant consequences for the country and the region. The podcast highlights how tensions are increasing between nation-states globally as traditional alliances and alignments evolve in the 21st century. It also discusses the various conflicts and insurgencies occurring in different parts of the world. Overall, the podcast aims to provide listeners with a better understanding of world politics and the various fault lines that exist in an increasingly dangerous and complex multipolar world. Xi's latest purge targets the military. Why did powerful generals fall out of favor? CNN. China's President Xi Jinping is reportedly cracking down on corruption within the country's rocket force, an elite branch of the People's Liberation Army, PLA, that oversees the country's nuclear and ballistic missiles. Last week, 9 high-ranking PLA officers were removed from China's top legislature, the National People's Congress, NPC. The NPC is a rubber-stamp parliament that grants its members immunity from arrest and criminal prosecution, but sudden expulsions from the legislature are often followed by further disciplinary or legal action. Analysts believe that the officers were expelled as part of a corruption probe into procurement and development of advanced equipment. The rocket force has been invested with a lot of expensive equipment since 2016, when it was upgraded into a full armed service from the former 2nd Artillery Corps, and has since rolled out an unprecedented expansion. In the past few years, satellite photos have shown the construction of hundreds of silos for intercontinental ballistic missiles in Chinese deserts. 5 takeaways from Haley and DeSantis in dueling televised town halls. Washington Post. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley both held CNN town halls in Iowa on Thursday. The pair are currently fighting for second place in the state, and are set to debate each other next week. The Iowa caucuses, scheduled to take place on January 15, are the first major event of the Republican primary process and are seen as an important opportunity for candidates to make a mark. The town halls were largely dominated by criticism of the current frontrunner, Donald Trump, with both DeSantis and Haley taking shots at his policies and behavior. The race has been largely stagnant for some time, with Trump consistently leading in the polls. DeSantis has made an effort to appeal to Trump supporters while simultaneously criticizing him, which has earned him some mockery from Haley supporters. Both candidates have also faced questions on controversial statements they have made in recent weeks, with DeSantis being asked about his views on same-sex marriage and Haley being asked about her comments on the Civil War. Becoming Taiwan, in China's shadow, an island asserts its identity. Financial Times. As Taiwan approaches its presidential elections, tensions with China are rising. The Chinese Communist Party, CCP, claims Taiwan as part of its territory and has threatened to take it by force if necessary. The CCP's belligerent rhetoric, paired with military demonstrations in the skies and waters close to Taiwan, has raised concerns that Beijing may act on its threat and assault the country. The opposition Democratic Progressive Party, DPP, is accusing the ruling party, the Kuomintang, KMT, of risking war with China, while the KMT suggests that the DPP's refusal to define Taiwan as part of China endangers the country's sovereignty and security. Many Taiwanese feel that foreign powers do not fully understand the complexities of the dispute and that they only view Taiwan as a product of the 1949 conflict between China's Communist Party and the KMT. However, Taiwan's history is much more complicated, involving various colonizers and indigenous peoples. The island has never belonged to China, and many Taiwanese reject the idea of unification with China. The Taiwanese population is made up of ethnic Chinese and Austronesian peoples, who were the original inhabitants of the island. Over the centuries, various colonial powers, including Japan, Spain, and the Dutch, ruled Taiwan. The Chinese Nationalist Party, KMT, arrived in Taiwan in 1949 after losing the Chinese Civil War to the CCP. Since then, Taiwan has developed into a vibrant democracy, but tensions with China remain. The Ukraine-Taiwan trade-off. Foreign affairs. There is a growing debate over whether the U.S. should prioritize military aid to Ukraine or focus on deterring a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. Some argue that continued support to Ukraine is depleting resources that should be used to deter China, while others believe that supporting Ukraine is essential for showcasing resolve and maintaining the U.S.'s reputation as a steadfast ally. The article argues that both forms of credibility are important, but prioritizing one can undermine the other. Ultimately, the author suggests that policymakers should prioritize resolve and continue supporting Ukraine, while also working to improve capabilities and stockpile relevant weapons for Taiwan. The US can address the limitations in the supply of weapons by shoring up its defense industrial base and enlisting the help of allies. By doing so, the US can send a powerful signal to potential adversaries that unprovoked aggression will not go unpunished. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your trusted observer from the 6 Degrees world. Today, we have explored a range of news stories that reflect the complex dynamics in East Asia and beyond. Let's dive into these stories and uncover the deeper implications. First, we discussed Beijing's dilemma in responding to a potential victory by an independence-leaning president in Taiwan. Beijing has tried various tactics in the past, but they have not been effective. It faces the risk of further pushing regional allies into the US camp if it escalates tensions. On the other hand, playing the long game may not satisfy hardliners in Beijing. This dilemma highlights the challenge China faces in preventing Taiwanese independence without risking war or losing influence in the region. Next, we turned our attention to the case of Jimmy Lai, a British national who has been jailed by China. This case highlights China's crackdown on human rights, particularly in Hong Kong, and raises concerns about military action against Taiwan. The British government's response has been criticized for being inadequate, and more needs to be done to raise awareness and advocate for Lai's release. China's human rights abuses should not be ignored, and Hong Kong's deteriorating situation must be addressed on the international stage. Moving on, we discussed the warning from China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi against any attempt to decouple the US and Chinese economies. While tensions have eased between China and the US since Biden and Xi's meeting, recent issues have shown the fragility of the relationship. Wang's statement reflects China's desire to maintain economic ties with the US and avoid further decoupling, but the relationship remains delicate. In our Battle Lines podcast episode, we explored the tensions and conflicts occurring in different parts of the world. From the war in Gaza to the tensions in the Red Sea and the Taiwan presidential election, it is evident that tensions are increasing globally. Traditional alliances and alignments are evolving in the 21st century, leading to a more complex and dangerous multipolar world. It is crucial to understand these fault lines to navigate the shifting geopolitical landscape. We then delved into China's President Xi Jinping's crackdown on corruption within the rocket force. The expulsion of high-ranking officers from the National People's Congress suggests a corruption probe into the procurement and development of advanced equipment. China's rocket force has undergone significant expansion, with the construction of hundreds of silos for intercontinental ballistic missiles. This purge reflects Xi's determination to maintain control and root out corruption within the military. Next, we turned our attention to the town halls held by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. Both candidates are vying for second place in the Iowa caucuses, with the aim of challenging the current frontrunner, Donald Trump. The race has been stagnant, with Trump consistently leading in the polls. DeSantis and Haley have criticized Trump's policies and behavior, but they also face questions about their own controversial statements. This race highlights the divisions within the Republican Party and the challenges of challenging a popular incumbent. We then explored the tensions between Taiwan and China as the presidential election approaches. The Chinese Communist Party claims Taiwan as part of its territory and has threatened military action if necessary. The opposition Democratic Progressive Party accuses the ruling party of risking war, while the ruling party suggests that the opposition's refusal to define Taiwan as part of China endangers the country's sovereignty. It is essential to recognize Taiwan's complex history and the diverse population that rejects unification with China. Tensions with China remain a significant challenge for Taiwan's future. Lastly, we discussed the debate over whether the US should prioritize military aid to Ukraine or focus on deterring a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. Both forms of credibility are important, but prioritizing one could undermine the other. The author suggests that the US should prioritize resolve and continue supporting Ukraine while also improving capabilities and stockpiling relevant weapons for Taiwan. This approach would send a powerful signal to potential adversaries and maintain the US's reputation as a steadfast ally. In conclusion, these news stories highlight the complex dynamics and challenges in East Asia and beyond. The future of cross-strait relations, China's human rights abuses, the fragility of US-China relations, and the evolving geopolitical landscape all deserve our attention. It is crucial for policymakers and citizens alike to understand these issues and contribute to the discussion. So, my dear viewers, what are your thoughts on these stories? I welcome your ideas, questions, and perspectives. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.